DDG episode 229. My name is Dave, and I'm joined by Michael.
What's up, Dave? How is it going? I know you had a busy afternoon / evening. I had a long work day, but we have a ton of news to talk about.
Well, the first thing I want to know is, how does it feel for the White Sox to win a game this month?
Honestly, I'm waiting for the owner to die this year, so I have not been paying attention. I know they're in pain right now.
They lost 21 straight games.
Yeah, and it was definitely the talk of, The Office, everyone talking about it, and I'm just anytime I see the White Sox trend, I immediately type in Reinsdorf just to see if it's the news that everyone wants, but it's not. It's just they suck. So yeah.
By the way, whatever that noise was just now is the noise that Andy hears.
And you know what? It's gonna happen a lot because savage content. So yeah. So that might pop up every once in a while. But yeah, the White Sox. They won a game finally. People were celebrating at the office today, and I just felt bad for them that they are celebrating the fact that the team is not going to break the losing streak record in the American League. I am just waiting for the owner to pass or to sell the team at this point, because I'm now in favor of selling the team.
So
move to Memphis, but sell the team.
So I guess question. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too bad, but
it's too late.
Reinsdorf is somebody in his family taking the team. There's got to be
So he does have a son who helps with the Bulls. I believe he told his kids sell the teams when he passes, but he's leaving it up to them whether they actually want to do that. All of them are incompetent.
Okay, I was gonna say, what's the perception of? Because locally in Detroit, the Detroit Tigers and the Detroit Red Wings are owned by the Ilitch family. Who owns Little Caesars, the corporation Little Caesars. Within the last, I don't even know how long it's been now, 10 years plus years, Mike Ilitch, the father, passed away, and his son, Chris Ilitch. And since he has taken over the Red Wings and the Pistons, they have no playoff victories or something like that. Or not even the Pistons, I'm sorry, the Tigers and the Wings. It's really, really bad underneath the Chris Ilitch era.
Yeah, I don't see it improving because I believe Reinsdorf's son has been the main person behind the Bulls, because Jerry Reinsdorf, his passion is baseball. He just happens to own the Bulls when Michael Jordan was playing.
Yeah.
So because he won 6 championships with the Bulls, he hasn't really given a shit about the Bulls since then, and his focus has been the White Sox. And right now he's asking the city to help build him a new stadium in downtown Chicago, and it just happens to be when the team is at its worst. So it's just kind of entertaining to see this person go to city hall meetings or whatever and be fans really want to come to our games, but it's just not as accessible. And it's just who's trying to come to your games, Jerry? Because the team is garbage.
All right,
and we're talking about a team that 3 years ago people were damn, they might have a dynasty in the making. And then they hired Tony La Russa, and then everything went downhill.
All right, so now that we've bored you with sports ball, we'll go over some just basic stuff. So we are Digital Days Gaming. We are a weekly gaming podcast, believe it or not, that posts every Thursday morning, 6 a.m. Eastern time on podcast services. If you're able to give us a download subscription and leave us a review, that's super helpful. Streaming it is fine as well too. You can also watch us on Twitch or YouTube, twitch.tv/digitaldaysgaming or youtube.com/digitaldaysgaming. You can subscribe on YouTube, that's free. You can follow on Twitch, that's free. You can subscribe on Twitch if you choose. You can link your Amazon account and your Twitch account and get Prime Gaming. You get a bunch of free cosmetic stuff and games, codes, monthly stuff that they do, as well as a free subscription to a streamer of your choice. If you are willing to do that and you consider subscribing to Digital Days Gaming, that is super helpful. If not, please just subscribe to a streamer. If you're not into Twitch at all either, and just kind of maybe download the mobile app or set a monthly reminder on the 5th of the month to re-up your subscription to us, if so, because it doesn't auto upload. And that would always be helpful. It's a really easy, free way, kind of free in air quotes, to help us and monetize some stuff for us that we use just to pay the Simplecast bill or the publishing bill or something like that. And nothing crazy. Michael and I aren't swimming in money here, so. But
I don't have a proper key light, as you can tell.
Other than that, you can see everything else at digitaldaysgaming.com, or everything is linked in the show notes. And we're going to jump into the news.
Yeah, Dave, we actually, for the first week of August, we have a crazy amount of news. Some stuff is going to be kind of quick. Other stuff I just kind of put in here for fun. Well, only one of the stories is for fun, or maybe two. The rest are kind of depressing video games in 2024. But this first one is some good info, some good news. So Nintendo did a financial report, and they kind of released a bunch of info in terms of like first party games that sold over 1 million copies. And then one thing that everyone was talking about, and I find fascinating, is the lifetime sales for the Switch have just passed 143 million units. Which is a crazy big number. It is currently only trailing the Nintendo DS's lifetime sales. So it's already passed the PS2. It already passed the Wii. It only needs about 11 mil to reach the Nintendo DS lifetime sales of 154 million units sold. And Nintendo projects that they will pass this at the end of their fiscal year, because they currently think they'll sell about 13 million units before the end of that.
Based on their holiday lineup, I believe that to be true.
Yeah.
Question real quick though, like Nintendo DS lifetime sales, like is this all the iterations of DS or just like?
It doesn't include the 3DS, 2DS.
Okay.
It is just the DS and the DS Lite.
Okay.
I believe those are the two iterations for DS.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one thing I immediately looked at as well.
Just because really, there's only been 2 iterations of a Switch, and even so, even I like that second iteration. I would like, I don't really. It's an OLED screen, so it's not like. But when they did the 3DS and the 2DS stuff, like it, there was a lot of different things that were going on with the DS, which is fine. It's still at its core, it still is like if you can take a DS game and put it in the system, it's a DS. So.
Yeah. So their overall, it's like DS is number 1 with 154 million units sold. Switch is number 2 with 143. Game Boy, which also had there's no differentiation between Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Pocket, Game Boy Light. Those combined sold 118 mil. The Wii sold 101 mil. Game Boy Advance, that is this Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Advance SP, 81. 3DS, which will include 3DS, new 3DS, 2DS, 3DS XL, 2DS XL, sold 75 million. NES 61, SNES 49, N64 32, GameCube 21, and the Wii is at 13 mil.
The Wii U or the Wii?
The Wii U, sorry, the Wii U is dead last with 13.56 million units sold.
Crazy.
They did say they expect a huge boost from Zelda this year.
Yeah.
There wasn't. It sounds like Princess Peach and Paper Mario didn't do amazing, but it sold their expectations, and it kept their expectations pretty reasonable. Nintendo is one of the only publishers
they know what they
reasonable.
have. So.
Yeah. But they still expect like Tears of the Kingdom to be like a system seller for them as well. That was mentioned a couple times in a report that Tears of the Kingdom, they expect the sales to continue to be well, and then after Echoes of Wisdom comes out, they expect like another run of like Tears of the Kingdom to start selling again after.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was a lot of mention of the Zelda effect on this console, so there's a lot of expectations going into the Zelda game that's coming out in like a month?
Yeah, I believe so.
2 months? Yeah. But yeah, Nintendo continuing to do good. There was a cool list of just like all their million selling Switch games, and the list was just kind of crazy to think about. This might go down as Nintendo's like not only sales wise, but just like critically, this has to be considered like their best generation platform. Especially because it has so many remakes of the other platforms on it as well.
Without a doubt. So,
yeah. All right, I put this one in, Dave. We don't have much to go on, but I put this in for you. THQ is teasing a new Darksiders. So THQ released a brief trailer that showed the charred circle or console chanting for Horsemen. No info on what type of game it is. A lot of people were saying it could either be a remake, it could be a mainline continuation, or a spin-off. There's nothing you can go off of that
Yeah,
trailer.
no.
Other than the assets didn't look too great, so I almost felt
Well,
like
that's
it was
kind of what
Genesis.
the charred console, like that's what it looked like in Darksiders 1 and 2. I don't think I ever got far enough in 3 to know. I mean, I need to play it still. Like, I want to play it, and this might spark it. But to know if like the console was in Darksiders 3, but if that view, that type of console was in Darksiders 1 and 2, probably in 3, and then Darksiders Genesis had a little bit of a spinoff with the Fourth Horseman, whose name is escaping me currently. But like, if this goes back to like a 1, 2, or 3 style, especially a 1 or 2, and I can't speak on 3 enough, but hopefully 1 or 2, like I'd be super excited. Like, I have 1, 2, and 3, and I really enjoyed 1 and 2. For some reason, something in 3 never grabbed me, but it's probably something I just need to focus on because I've been having video game ADD for like a couple years now, ultimately. But yeah, it's a little weird that this is just a teaser. Hopefully, like, and what makes it even more weird about the teaser is like they didn't even like give a date or anything like of when the next reveal is. Like,
I don't even think they said what studio was working on it.
Yeah, so like hopefully Gamescom. Hopefully, but I'm not really
I
holding
hope
my
so.
breath.
If you do that brief of a teaser, I feel like, though THQ has been known to make a teaser to hire employees,
Yeah,
to recruit.
But at the same time, you'd have to have a studio. Like
They've had bare bones studios before, and they've had a lot of layoffs. So
I think
we
that
don't know what they're working with.
Darksiders Genesis in general told them that yes, there might be some brand recognition with Darksiders, but don't go that way. So like go back to your third person, action oriented, semi asymmetric or top down look to it that they had, and like that's my hope of what it is.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that they said the word Darksiders. I'm just geeked in general. So.
Yeah. Oh, it was Strife was the
Yes.
Genesis one. The only thing that I concerned me because it was just a teaser. It's just I do think like it kind of looked cheap looking. Like it didn't look great looking. But
keep
it's
in
just
mind
a
if it
teaser.
is the console from 1 and 2, we're talking about 10+ year old games. More than that now.
Yeah. If they're remaking them yet again. So like I don't like this. Looked like this was, from what I can tell, this is like new footage, new assets. It just doesn't look great. But again, Darksiders is always like a AA game, anyways. The first one maybe you can say was a AAA attempt, but it always kind of felt that
First,
AA.
first and second one I would almost say like 2.5 A. Like
Yeah, they're on the cusp.
Yeah.
At least it was AAA for what that THQ could do.
Right. Third one wasn't Airship. 1 and 2 was Airship Syndicate. Third one was not Airship. And then Genesis was Airship Syndicate. And long time ago, I was able to sit down with those guys and talk to them. And like my first question was like, "Why this new style?" And he's like, "It's cheaper." Like that's literally what he's like. It's cheaper. It's easier to develop. It was makeable.
It was either no Darksiders or this.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's not a bad game either.
No, I remember you really liked it.
It's just a little. I have it on PC, and so like that's something I have fun with on the ROG and stuff like that periodically. And it's just one of those ones where I kind of need to do something similar to what you do. I need to write down like maybe like 10 games that I want to play, and then I want to start kind of crossing them off. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, Gamescom is just like 2-3 weeks away, and I think Jeff Keighley's already been telling people to temper their expectations. But
this
Darksiders
would fit into that temper 100%. Like, this is not gonna break any YouTube records or anything like that. But I'm also slightly worried that if they are trying to tell like the full story of Strife, it's been a long time. Like, so they almost need to do something to, because there's, Owen, as an example, probably doesn't even know what Darksiders is, and he's going to be 9 or 10 years old by the time this game comes out. Like, that's kind of their prime customer,
He wasn't born when that first game came out. And then like the was it the Definitive Edition for the first one, or
the first and second one have been
War
done a couple times. Yeah, War Master Edition. So
and
like
they were pretty bare bones remasters. They were just ports.
I wouldn't be opposed to like a 1 and 2 combo, like full like remake remaster at this point, like with some better graphics and some
if they
better...
were to do remakes again, I feel like they would then need to promise that fourth one will happen, as opposed to like, hey, here's 1, 2, and 3 again, and then it's just like, well, we want the fourth one.
Agreed, but then I also think that this probably wouldn't happen, but I think that all 3 of these would need to be one game.
Yeah, it would need to be a package. It would need to be one of those things where
you don't put Genesis in there, like, because it doesn't fit with.
You know what? Genesis pre-order bonus, because it's such a small thing.
Right, but I'm saying like like Genesis doesn't need to be in there because it doesn't fit the genre of 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, especially if the game they're teasing is more like 1, 2, and 3. Like it would just be weird to just have this kind of in the middle.
But I'm stoked, and I hope that I don't have to wait till 2024 to see Darksiders again.
I think you will get a trailer either now or Game Awards, and it will be 2-3 years before you get to play it, though.
Yeah, I'm 2-3 years I'm not okay with, but I mean something else, like even some kind of like 5-second glimpse of gameplay, so I can tell what kind of style it is.
Yeah, so you can figure out if you need to be excited for it or not.
Right.
No. All right, Dave, let's start getting into the darker news of the week. Meta is shutting down Ready at Dawn. So Ready at Dawn, the makers of several like high quality PSP games, and then of course the Order 1886. Well, most people have bad opinions on the Order 1886. They were acquired by Meta in 2020 because it kind of became like a premier VR studio in that space, and then also for Meta. But Meta has decided to shutter the studio and move resources over to some of their other internal studios. So 4 years after being acquired, they're shutting them down. And this just kind of shows, like VR stuff seems like it might be a little bit of a struggle right now. Like it kind of hit its ceiling, and we're starting to see some of those studios kind of shut down because of it. But yeah, it's a shame to see a studio, especially, you know what, the Order 1886, most people I don't feel like liked it. I wasn't really a big fan of it, but they were a quality studio. The Order 1886 was a high quality looking game, and then if you look at their like history,
like the God of War stuff they did, like that was
Daxter,
phenomenal.
ton of good mobile content, and then their VR stuff. Unfortunately, I didn't play any of the VR stuff, but they were looked at as like, oh, they make decent VR games or good VR games.
Yeah. I think the thing that sucks about this is that when you're outside of the big 3 or the big gaming umbrella, like when like people don't consider Facebook, Meta to be this like video game corporation. They don't hold them to the same standard. But like all the stuff that we've been hearing about with layoffs with Microsoft, layoffs with Sony, and people like, especially with Microsoft, are like, oh, they print money. Like, why can't they just like absorb this and ride this out? Like, put that same energy to Meta. Like, they could have ridden this out. Instead, they're like, nope, you're not doing what we want to do, so you can't work here anymore. We know we acquired you, and we had this grand plan for you, but that's not working, so you don't exist anymore. Like, and that's the part that sucks the most. It sucks. The first part is anybody that loses their job, like, that's awful. And and then now there's awesome stuff that those people did that we're never going to get to see from that group, and then they get shattered and scattered all over the place, and a mega corporation, multi-billion-dollar corporation is just like, yeah, nope, we're done. We're done with your toy.
They literally have a notebook, and then they just scratch off the studio, and they're like, oh, whatever, and and that's the scary thing is like when we talk about like all those companies that get acquired, it's like you understand why people go with like a Microsoft or a Sony to be acquired, because when you go into these companies that kind of do a little bit of everything, like I feel like you're more at risk of this backfiring.
If you're a studio that's up for sale right now, why would you want to like be acquired by Meta? Like,
no, unless you were a couple years ago when they were big on the VR stuff, that definitely was something that like I could see them being like, yeah, let's go to Meta, but like the risk there is just too high to jump to a company like Meta. Like they were better off trying to pursue any other publisher other than Meta. Other than the fact that like, hey, Meta makes the VR headset, they shouldn't shut us down or anything like that, because we'll always have a job because they want to sell hardware, and that turned out not to be the case. But like Meta, Facebook, their whole thing has been kind of on fire because like they were super obsessed with the VR stuff, and then they got super obsessed with the metaverse garbage that looked like trash. So now like the whole video game industry is just kind of like suffering through like the metaverse multiverse stuff that's been going on the last couple years.
So,
or at least the VR world.
There's a question in our chat. I don't recognize the name, so I don't something forever or for Eve. If they were unionized, would it have saved their jobs? Question. If the answer is no, then what is Activision doing? If yes, then why isn't pro-union being spread throughout the gaming industry? Okay, so problem number one. I walk a fine line with this. So unions are a necessary evil, but unions do not fix all of the problems. Contracts can help save things, and unions tend to have contracts, but unions also can significantly slow down a process because of rules, because of regulations, because of collective bargaining, and all that stuff that's in there. And then typically, Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, upper management or corporate management isn't part of the union, and then they usually can't.
Yeah, they're not. They're corporate,
right.
And then union are the actual employees. The people that do the work are actually
right. So then, like a creative director would most likely be a corporate employee. He would have a very hard time communicating or giving jobs to his workers, his art director and stuff or artists. Because they would have to be like a union rep there that falls outside of their range, moving people from one project to another. It can get hairy, and it doesn't.
Depending on what work they're asking them to do, it's
right.
not like they tell the art director, "I need more assets. Can you do this?" But it could be like, "Hey, can you stay the weekend?" And it's like, "No."
Well, but even moving moving somebody from one position like director of art or like art to then working on a multiplayer map, like that can be a challenge depending on what your contract. Yes, and it like. The things like of the it's much more murky water than I really want to get into, but in terms of like you wouldn't be able to have like sales incentives, you wouldn't be able to like that stuff wouldn't exist at the protection of your job. It would probably lower your, believe it or not, it probably would lower their wage,
but it would give them safety nets that they
correct.
Wouldn't have because of their wage difference. So it's one of those things where,
but it would also turn into a ton of subcontracting.
Potentially, yeah. Unless there's some union rules against that in place. It's hard to tell if a union it would be a fix-all for any of this stuff. It could be a fix-all. Sometimes, like when I worked at like Target, the threat of a union was enough to get us good incentives.
Yes.
So sometimes unions can help just by being a threat.
Right.
Because,
and then sometimes the votes don't pass.
Yeah.
Like they it has to have a majority. There's a lot of minutia that goes into that of getting like the way you form a union. Like you kind of have to get some of that other stuff going on in there. And the way that you form a union is like somebody like from the outside needs to come in, and then you need to get a director. And there's a lot of moving parts that happen in there. And again, it's a necessary evil, but I don't think it's the automatic magic key.
Yeah. So in this case, I don't think a union would have prevented the studio from being shut. A union would have maybe made the process of shutting down a little bit easier to do. In easier, I mean as in like easier on the employees that are being let go, because it means they would have certain rights that they would have to, be accommodated for, if that makes sense, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wouldn't stop the studio from like shutting down, but they would at least have the severance stuff negotiated. There would be notice. A better notice than what we tend to hear, where we hear people get, they'll get a Zoom meeting in the morning, and then in the afternoon they're locked out and unemployed. There'd be some protections there in terms of how that news is kind of given to them and the benefits for that. Yeah. Usually the union stuff in the video game industry, what it's mostly they're trying to do is just to get that work-life balance, because currently it is a fucking mess. Yeah. And that's where a union can be very strong in terms of just like setting those standards. Where it could get, like gunked up is, in some of the bigger things that like Dave was talking about. But for the most part, people just kind of want like some standards, and currently there is no standard in the gaming industry. But
at the same time, like building that, like that balance is important. But are you willing to wait another 12 to 18 to 24 months for your game because of that balance. Like we've seen stuff like from Bloomberg's books where they're like, well, Uncharted 4 wouldn't have happened if we didn't do 6 months of this. Like it wouldn't have ever came out. Like releasing a video game, if you talk to devs, like getting a game to launch is borderline freaking miracle. And with that comes some outside the box thinking. And with that said, the gaming industry does need to, I feel like a union turns it into like a 1-lane road with huge brick walls on the left and right side, but the video game industry needs to remain a 4 to 8-lane road with some significant guardrailing. And right now it doesn't have any guardrails at all.
Yeah, which is why there needs to be some unionization for some studios, but there's also some studios you never hear anything about threats of unionization because they have like a better work-life balance. Yeah. Usually it's indie studios that have a better work-life balance. And it just comes down to that. It always comes down to this thing I always talk about in terms of just like how expensive games are getting is due from the demands of the fans. And it's going to be up to like the players and the fans to be like, we are okay with things taking longer. And also we're okay with things not being as pretty as they are.
In the end, before the pandemic, if I would have told you that Bungie's going to lay off 30% of his staff, you would have been like, why?
Yeah.
You know, like, because like they arguably have made 2 significant game, quote unquote games of generations or brands of generation. Like the Halo and Destiny carry significant weight in the gaming industry, and they still can't, like, they're still missing revenue and they're still dying, and it's just a crazy thing that we live in right now. And like we heard about the I would love to see the stat. I'll never see it, but the Naughty Dog turnover rate's probably like 80%.
Well, because they did a lot of like contractor work and stuff like that, so it's like it's always kind of crazy. But yeah, that's what Meta's doing. We're gonna probably see more pullback from Meta as they try and like figure out what the fuck their company is gonna be like in the future. But let's move on with the bad news train. So Game Informer has been shut down after 33 years. So GameStop has officially shut down Game Informer. The news came pretty quick. There was what a lot of people suspect, an AI-generated message posted to the Game Informer Twitter account. The reason people suspect it is people went to AI engines and then typed in Game Informer closing and then got very similar messages to what was posted. This led to the editors over at Game Informer kind of getting one last tweet in, giving a proper farewell, and then the Twitter account was deleted, and then shortly after that the entire website and its archives were deleted as well. Right now there's currently a big effort in order to like archive as much of the Game Informer stuff as possible. I know there's a lot of people trying to like save their YouTube channel because there's 33 years of Game Informer's existence, but it's about like 11 to 15 years of YouTube existence that people are hoping they can save. This, for a lot of people, felt like a long time coming. A lot of people didn't even know Game Informer was still publishing like a physical magazine, but they were doing good work on their website. So this is a shame to see this closed, and GameStop will just continue to probably invest in NFTs and random stuff.
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, I'll be honest, like I barely, like, GameStop as a whole, like in terms of like the digital market and how I purchase video games and what I'm doing now, like I go in there and it's like, it's not even like a video game store. Like I go in there now to like look for something for Owen, like as a toy or a stuffy or a decorative piece. Like it's more of
Five Nights at Freddy's section. Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since I've been offered a GameStop or Game Informer subscription at a GameStop, because that used to be like part of the register process. But yeah, no, this is a shame. I was actually still getting Game Informers because I was a GameStop Pro member.
Digital thing of them too, like they would email a digital copy to you.
Yeah, I was actually getting a physical copy.
Oh, okay.
As well, which I think we're down to quarterly because it was very inconsistent when I would get them.
Yeah.
But when you're a GameStop Pro member, you would just automatically get like a paper copy of the stuff. But
ultimately, you probably became a Pro member for when you're digging around GameStops for PS3 games and stuff. So
basically, yeah.
Okay, and I think at buy one get 6 free, but if you're a Pro member, you get 7 free. Okay.
GameStop Pro, you get $5 a month, a $5
Yeah.
coupon a month, and it
Okay.
costs $20 to be a member. So it was like
Okay.
one of those things where I was like,
Yeah.
screw it, and I get a paper copy of
Right.
Game Informer.
And we've worked in retail long enough to be like, all right, I'll help you out here. Like,
Yeah, usually if they were nice, it's like, okay, cool, I'm gonna do this.
Like, I get it. You got your metrics. You got to hit, Brady. I'll help you out here. I'll throw you a bone.
Basically, that's how, man. We're probably suckers for that stuff. When
Yeah.
someone's like, can you fill this survey out?
Yeah.
And you're just like, yeah, I'll do that in the car. Okay.
Yep. Did that today when Hazel and I went out to lunch. The lady's like, hey, there's a survey. If you could, I'm like, okay, I got you. So like,
yeah, I don't even want the free cookie. But yeah, no, this is a shame. Like, I used to love getting Game Informers back when you used to be able to get Game Informers inside a regular store,
yeah.
not just at a GameStop or through the mail. It definitely had me nostalgic of just like, I wonder how many I saved from back in the day in my parents' basement. And now I'm kind of tempted to go like try and dig some of those out, because Game Informer physical copies that I've had the last 2 years, not that great. Their website is where all their good content was, obviously.
Yeah.
But back then, Game Informer was like the shit in terms of
even
cover
again
stories.
Yeah,
and
like
stuff.
pre-pandemic, I was gonna say, like, cover stories, like they would get, like, again, whether it was Destiny or like it was a huge game, like they would be the ones they would get all the dev things and talk to the get the multi-page article if you wanted like a deep dive on a game you were looking forward to, like that, like, the Call of Duty Black Ops and zombie multiplayer, like it would have like a 5-page article about it. Like that was like really cool, like in terms of like deep dives into the developers and pictures and things that you wouldn't get in a trailer and stuff, and that's where that would come from. But society hates reading currently.
You can doom scroll on Twitter all day and stuff like that, but actually reading articles is like people are allergic to. But I remember in the 90s and 2000s, like the Game Informer cover was huge, because like if there was a game that wasn't from a franchise on the cover, that game was almost made, in terms of just like, oh shit, what is this game that I've never heard about on the cover of Game Informer? Or at least that's how like me and my friends used to look at it in like the 90s and 2000s, especially the 90s. When you would see like one of those covers and it was something that you'd never heard of before on it, it was a big deal. But yeah, Game Informer, the YouTube channel's still up, so definitely look up old videos on Game Informer. My favorite Game Informer video is they did a 30-hour Smash Brothers marathon for Guinness World Records in like 2011.
Mm-hmm.
They made like a little 90-minute documentary on it. Really entertaining stuff. So I've been kind of like, when I'm bored or if I'm like doing some mundane task at work, I pull up like the Game Informer YouTube channel and then sort by oldest video.
Yeah.
And then just start going through random stuff.
Like going through like quickly on Reset Era. I mean, like the Batman Arkham cover that they had with like the silhouette Batman, like some of the stuff that they would do on it was just like amazing. And like to your point, like Dino Crisis 2, like as a Game Informer cover, and like if you were on there, like Final Fantasies 15s, like the Zelda Skyward Sword, like Epic Mickey, like these covers were like, when this stuff would happen, like it was a big deal. That you know, and it's just obviously it changed.
And it's a shame, because like the current issues of Game Informer that I've been getting probably have some of the best cover art that I've seen. Like they put a lot of work into their covers. And it's just a shame to see that go away. But yeah. I wish I was into like digital magazines, but I never could get into them. But I'll probably definitely be scrolling through them, and then going over to my parents' house to see if I have any boxes. Because I used to get the official PlayStation magazine subscribed, and then I had a Game Informer subscription. So I have a ton of stuff. And I want to buy a house soon, so it's one of those things where I have ideas where I might be destroying some Game Informer and PlayStation magazines and trying to like
memorialize them
art
at the same time as damaging them. So.
I have some ideas that I want to do that Sarah's going to be like, Michael, don't put that on the walls, but it's going to happen.
You could have the basement and nothing else. Like
yeah I know, I already said like I'm going to do something dumb with like some walk-in closet or something. Like let me get race car track carpet somewhere in this house. And let me cover the walls in comic books. Simple stuff. But yeah, RIP Game Informer, and this is probably the most frustrating report. this week, but unsurprising because we were just talking about them, but in a positive light. Warner Brothers is currently looking to sell off and unload some assets again. So Warner Brothers is back in the news for all the wrong reasons. This time they were looking to offload assets to make up for their current dire financial situation. According to the report, they're looking to get rid of like smaller assets like TV channels, TV stations, some IP, as well as some video game studios, though they're willing to sell stakes of their video game studios as well, if that works for them. This is a little surprising because about a month ago, Warner Brothers acquired a video game studio, Player First, the makers of Multiverses, and there was a lot of talk about like how their video game industry was like, or their video game arm was actually like a bright spot in their portfolio, but it looks like they are trying to maybe take advantage of that bright spot by selling some of it off or getting some stakes sold. But they're currently dealing with some bad stuff. Me and Dave, I mean, we were talking about them losing the NBA contract, which is a huge thing. Now they're going to get into a lawsuit with the NBA over that whole deal.
Which they're going to lose.
Yeah, they're going to lose 100%. And did you see True TV's turning into TNT Sports? Like they're rebranding True TV to a TNT Sports channel, which is hilarious after you lose the NBA to make a whole sports network.
I did not see that. But it just tells me that they had an outside investor trying to front the money for them for the NBA, and they don't have that investor had no interest in anything else other than the NBA.
Yeah, and this came out today that their cable enterprise made $9 billion less than it did 2 years ago, which I can only imagine is going to be way worse when we're looking 2 years from today when they no longer have the NBA. Because they have the NBA next year, which is probably going to bring in high ratings to say bye to the inside the NBA team.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dave, how do you feel about a studio or a publisher buying a studio and then a month later being like, we need to sell some studios and sell some stakes?
It's par for the course with corporations right now. Like somehow they find the money to do something, but then they don't want to keep the other money. So
yeah, do you think so? Like the reports are saying, like, hey, they might sell off some studios. Just a reminder of what they own. They have Avalanche Studios, that's the Hogwarts team, Rocksteady, Suicide Squad, TT Games, Lego, NetherRealm, Mortal Kombat, Monolith Productions, which is the Middle Earth company, and then the Gotham Knights company, which is Warner Brothers Montreal. I can imagine off this list, we know the studios that they're only going to want to sell a stake of and the studios that they just kind of want to get rid of. Mm-hmm. I would imagine NetherRealm and Rocksteady are like two studios that like they probably would want to sell a stake to, and by stake I mean probably go to like a Tencent or NetEase and being like, how much would you give us for like 10 to 48% of this company?
Right.
And then the other studios could be the studios that they go to, like a EA, PlayStation, Xbox, and say how much for the whole studio. I think Avalanche might be also one of those studios that they would sell a stake of and maybe not sell off completely.
Yeah,
because Hogwarts did well.
Right, but I mean, if at the current state of the gaming industry, I don't think anybody really wants to buy stakes in anything. I mean, yeah, like he's somebody like saying it's like Embracer Group all over again. It seems like it's very similar, but I mean, if I'm working for Multiverse, I'm very concerned about who just bought us now releasing an earnings statement saying that they don't have any money. Like,
yeah, so. And also saying we're looking to sell assets and studios. Yeah, I'm sure, like, if you're like Xbox who were poking around Warner Brothers, you're either like, what the fuck? You should have sold to us a couple years ago, or you're like, oh, we can pick up something really cheap now since they're desperate. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if you're like an Xbox, like, you know, you're in trouble with the FTC. Acquiring another studio would probably look bad legally for them, but also if the deal is right, do they just say screw it?
Right. And then Sony, I almost feel like right now Sony can't do it because of the struggles with Bungie. Like, they're just like, why are you purchasing something else? Like it's just a really weird era right now, like to where like the iron's hot for like Ubisoft or EA. Like, yeah,
like, or an Ubisoft who have Game Pass money that they're just sitting on now. Of like, because I could see, like, man, I would love for PlayStation to acquire Rocksteady. I know
Oh,
that's a
right.
pipe dream, but just imagine Rocksteady and Naughty Dog working together just a little bit
Yeah.
on something would be amazing. But yeah, if I'm like EA who needs to rebuild, like see what
Oh
Warner
my gosh.
Brothers.
Let Rocksteady make that Ninja Turtle game I want with Naughty Dog's Darkness. Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just
you know,
like-
exactly. Yeah, it would be
like-
amazing. I would imagine like EA would be interested in like a monolith. Warner Brothers Montreal for Ubisoft, just because
Yeah.
like, hey, they're in the neighborhood.
Well, and Mortal Kombat's lingering around there too. Like just
Which
the-
I would imagine is the one like we are only selling a stake of this studio.
Yeah.
But yeah, a fighting game studio for like any of the major publishers would be huge because none of them. Capcom's the only one that has a fighting game branch
Yeah.
in terms of major publishers. So we'll see where this goes. I think this is for real this time because their earnings call today was an absolute bloodbath, and apparently they were like telling between canceling like 10 shows this year, they were also telling shows that they did renew, like you have to cut your episode count because we don't have money. So they seem like they're in really dire like desperation mode right now. And if they, depending on like this lawsuit with the NBA, if they want to drag this out, that's going to be costly as well because they're going to lose that no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be, Warner Brothers is going to be in trouble, and Xbox and PlayStation are probably the only ones that can save them right now.
Yeah, I don't understand. I'd have to dig more into like Warner Brothers CEO and stuff like that right now. Like I wish I knew more, but I also don't want. I also don't want to. So.
Especially the CEO is the one who killed Inside the NBA, and I will never forgive that person for killing Inside the NBA. Shit. Let's transition into fucking bad news as well. So a lot of stuff came out of the Bungie layoffs from last week. This is not everything. I'm sure Dave might bring up something randomly because there's a lot of stuff that came out. But it has been reported that Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy have left Bungie due to the cancellation of an incubation project called Payback, which was a spin-off set in the Destiny universe. So the reason I wanted to put that they left Bungie is because they were not part of the layoffs. They bailed as soon as their incubation project was canceled. Let's just start there, Dave.
Yeah.
A spin-off in a story-focused spin-off set in the Bungie Destiny universe.
Yeah. So
definitely sounded interesting.
Yeah, what it sounds like that they're talking about, if you dig deeper into Jason Schreier's article, is that they were working on a third person, hence third person, that would be believed to be playing as current NPC characters in the Destiny universe. There's tons of like Zavala, Lord Shaxx, and Saint 14 and Ikora, like Cade. Like you can go on and on and on and on about how many like characters are in Destiny that you never get to play as. Similar to what I've been saying that I would love to have seen was story, like individual like 8 to 12 hour story arc games of this. I think the first problem is going away from first person. Like that's the first problem. Like that's who you are, Bungie. Like don't change that. And then what sucks is it sounds like all the money or revenue that Bungie was making was being spent on lost cause projects. Like they kept coming out and saying little things like, "Oh, Eververse helps pay for this, and Eververse helps pay for that." And oh, you guys spending money on Eververse, you got this exotic mission put in the game. Like they were being transparent about that, and it was but then you find out that they don't have any money or they're below revenue. Like, well, yeah, because you're spending your money on probably a risk, like a big risk, on top of multiple projects. Like there was believed to be a mobile Destiny game. Now we don't know if this was mobile Destiny 2. Or if this was like a different mobile version, like a completely different game.
And they're not a mobile studio, so you'd imagine
right. It's where the NetEase stuff.
Up.
It was where the NetEase stuff came from. And then there's also been rumors that they were trying to take the Trials of Osiris aspect, the 3 versus 3 PvP aspect, and spin that off into its own independent game, which would never work. Like
because you would have people complaining that they rip content from Destiny 2.
Well, that and part of the Destiny magic that they had was you could get something in from a raid that you could then take into PvP and do well
That's
with,
what I mean.
or vice
People
versa.
would feel robbed of
So
like
I don't know
content.
how loot would work in that. You know, not even content, like the whole circle of what Destiny was doing. It was like a PvP player would want to go do the raid because they'd want a certain weapon. And that's where you'd get like, hey, I need somebody to help me.
You would have to hope for perfect synergy, because if there is no
Right.
synergy, that's when you would get people
Yeah.
angry
Yep.
about like this would have been just a seasonal content before.
Yeah. So I mean, this is definitely like, you know, like the Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy leaving the company like sucks, but at the same time, this is that. You know, like I don't blame Mark Noseworthy. He's like, I don't want to do a first-person shooter. I've been doing first-person shooters for 25 years of my life. Like, you know, like I get it. Like they want a change of pace, but you know, it just either wasn't happening fast enough or wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And Project Payback was canceled prior to Final Shape releasing, and that was more, you know, the Luke Smith and I'm sure that they were still trying to get their stock vested. I'm sure there was a separate conversation because they're part of the reason that Bungie was acquired for so much. So if I'm Mark Noseworthy or Luke Smith's lawyer, I'm like, oh no, yeah,
Well,
you can
would-
pull the plug on our project, but there's more gray tape, there's more red tape that we got to go through.
I would imagine it's one of those things where like Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy, if I'm saying his name
Yeah.
right, are two veterans that if you're PlayStation, you're like, are they working on Destiny 2 or Marathon?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're Bungie, you're like not wanting to tell PlayStation like they want to leave. So what do? You put them on the incubation project so they don't get bored and leave prematurely or whatever. Because again, we know there's a bunch of retention bonuses and stuff
Yeah.
like that in there. And I imagine even if they would still get their money, there could be an issue if like your veterans leave before a certain time and, you know, like cash their checks, like because PlayStation paid. We talks a big deal about how much money was put for retention.
Yeah.
So the idea that like people potentially wanted to leave because they wanted to pursue other things is why the incubation projects happened to begin
Right.
with. Because then they're just like, can you do a third person thing in Destiny? Because it's the only way we can get some money put in this project.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
The other part that's lingering around in there is this Project Gummy Bears. That's what is believed to be these 40 employees spun off to
which is like a MOBA.
It's like a Smash Brothers style game. It sounds like, which again is not like
I heard MOBA a lot.
Yeah. You know, like Smash Element, you know, MOBA. But they're trying to make Destiny a MOBA. They're really like honestly, I think they're getting very in terms of an FPS MOBA. They've almost accomplished that. Like there's
a little bit. I mean, I think that's what they were building for NetEase.
Right.
Especially at the time NetEase made that.
Yeah, but we've seen like a Bungie trailer of like, you know, to your point, like 6 or 8 months ago, about like come work for Bungie, like before the first problem was, and like we believe that we saw footage of Gummy Bears, and it kind of had this like Fall Guys like animation look to it, you know, like a brawler kind of.
It was very
thing.
colorful
Yeah.
looking thing. It looked like it could be pretty cool based off
Right.
like the concept art that we
And
saw.
that's still allegedly being worked on, but now through a Sony property. So it's one of those things where like I'm sure that Sony's like what happened to this, or why isn't this being worked on, and why are you working on that? That Project Payback or whatever that's a huge risk, especially for a company that wasn't hitting revenue. And then you're taking money from the only game that's currently making you money, Destiny 2, to invest in something that's another risk. And Marathon's a risk also. Like Marathon's still a huge risk.
I would imagine, especially like I really genuinely think that PlayStation isn't too into the idea of Destiny as a whole. They were interested in Bungie's talent and then what Bungie could do in the future. So I'd imagine pitching PlayStation like we want to do a Destiny offshoot is just like, no, like we don't. Your charts are going down.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't want anything.
Yeah,
Destiny
I mean the
related.
biggest thing. Like I had come to this conclusion as well, and you had said this to me, you know, before, but I guess seeing it more typed out, like Jason Schreier said that every single expansion sold less than the previous expansion.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, so
they
it's,
would get spikes, but that
Right.
spike is smaller than the spike from 2
Yep.
years ago.
And so I mean, which is true, and then to the point where they're like, okay, you can't continue that model. So now everybody's like, oh, Destiny's going to be scaled back. Like, okay, well, like, let's be real here. Like, when they laid off all those other people 7 months ago, we still got an amazing piece of content out of Bungie in Final Shape. So
Yeah.
I don't know what, like, could we still get some really good content out of them? Yeah, I think so. Did they overhire? Probably. Are they spending too much money erroneously? Yeah. Did leadership finally pay the price for it? Looks like it.
Yeah. Another aspect that came out of this report is the 17% cut that we saw was already planned for earlier this year, and it wasn't a direct result of the Final Shape sales performance. So that was the thing that was going on. I might have even said it like Final Shape, might not have done enough to save the people that they were going to think. But it sounds like they were always going to make this cut. They just held it past the Final Shape maybe as a Hail Mary, but it's one of those things where it sounds like it was decided months ago that they are going to be cutting 17%. I imagine a couple months ago, PlayStation had already told them, like, we're going to pull that studio, or we're going to pull that incubator and spin it off, and we want talent. And maybe the Final Shape played a small role in that, in terms of, like, the only way Final Shape would have saved those jobs is if Final Shape turned into Fortnite or something crazy big. But in reality, it sounds like Bungie's bed was already made, and it was just a matter of waiting for everything to happen. Because I believe, Dave, like, you kind of hinted at this possibly being like an issue already, like in terms of the Final Shape did well, but it didn't likely play a part in
I mean, there's a lot of people that think
apart.
that was the end of Destiny, and not necessarily the end of it. It was the end of, like, a saga, and now it's like, what is the rest of it going to look like in a what's believed to be a very scaled down version of Destiny content going forward? And, like, ultimately, I mean, to your point, like you've been talking about, like, you're talking to, it's the franchise is 10 years old. Like, there's not
the fact that it made it that far.
Right. There's very, very few franchises that ever made it that far, successful or unsuccessful. You can't be unsuccessful and have a game out for 10 years. Like, you can't.
With only two games in that franchise, technically. It's kind of wild. And then the last thing is, according to several inside reports, Schreier, Totillo, Grubb all had different sources and reports based on this. The feeling within Bungie is that the execs in Bungie oversold to PlayStation on what the studio can and could do, and what their financial situation was at the time of acquisition. So there's been a lot of people saying that, like, whatever they were sharing with PlayStation wasn't fully honest and open in terms of, like, what situation Bungie was in financially. A lot of reporting is saying, like, Bungie was in serious financial trouble, which makes sense, because that's why you would get acquired. If you're healthy financially, there's no reason to sell yourself. But this came out, and there's a lot of there's even more talk about people wanting Pete Parsons to resign, just because of how this deal unfolded and, like, the mismanagement that went along with it. Before I let you jump in on that, this almost just feels like PlayStation fucked up and did not do their due diligence.
No, they wanted to counterpunch Microsoft. Like ultimately, like, they wanted to counterpunch Microsoft. Somebody in the chat's like, Bungie still has 850 people. Break them up and let them work on Sony's dead IPs. They can't. Like, you Cellcom, Killzone, Siphon Filter. So right now that the acquisition is even murkier. Like, first of all, like, they still need to. They have Destiny content promised through 2026, the end of, like, June of 2026. They have content promised in Destiny for that. They have Marathon. So now, how many people are working on Marathon and how many people are working on Destiny 2? You can't. It's not 50-50, so it can't be 400 apiece. So it's got to be like 600, 200, 500, 300.
Yeah, I would imagine it's like 70-30 with Marathon being 70 now the Final Shape's done.
And then also, like, if you believe the acquisition as, like, the Herman Hulst thing is slowly integrating into where he is pulling the strings of Bungie, that's not going to be something that happens initially. And technically, he has no say over Destiny 2 and Marathon, because they are Bungie-owned IPs. Now, like, again, it could be getting worse. I'm not saying I'm an expert on this acquisition.
We haven't got the official confirmation that Herman Hulst is taking over. So that is the
but if you believe everything that's been coming out, like, they don't. Sony can, if all the reporting is led to believe to be true, Sony cannot tell them what to do with Marathon, how to do it, and they cannot tell them what to do with Destiny 2. Unless Bungie comes to them for publishing help. Hence, what happened with Project Gummy Bears, where Sony's like, "Yep, that's ours." Like you open the door, they kick it down, and they take it.
Yeah, they're
And
like, "Oh, you have 40 people already working on this project?
Yep.
Cool, those are our 40 people.
Yep.
We're not going to give you as much money, so."
And I'm
give
sure
us
the
150.
studio, the creation of the studio, played a role into it as well. Of where there's probably something in the contract that they can't be absorbed into, you know. Like they can't be absorbed, and they couldn't have taken Gummy Bears and gave it to Sony Bend and sent 40 people to Bend to do it. Like I'm sure there's something in their contract that says that versus like, but we can make a new thing.
Yeah, because Bungie probably had some protection for its employees of like you cannot like relocate these staff.
I have
like,
a feeling we'll see something soon called like Sony Seattle. Like it'll just
because as far as I know, the reporting said like that studio 40 people, they're still in the Bungie office. They just now have their own little corner.
Yeah.
Of the office that they're working on. So it's one of those things where you could end up seeing like a PlayStation Seattle, a Sony Seattle pop up. This just hearing about how much of a shit show Bungie is right now, it makes me think this is so tied into Jim Ryan retiring. Because it just comes across as like
he just had a pissing match with Phil Spencer, and he's like, "I'll just go buy Bungie."
Yeah, and it, honestly, if you're kind of disconnected from the video game industry as a video game executive like Jim Ryan is supposedly is,
I'll go buy Halo and Destiny.
Yeah. I'm going to go buy the people that made Halo. Fuck you, Microsoft.
Yeah.
Like, and honestly, going to the board doesn't care. They probably also saw that like bullet point or like, fuck it, go for it. Did you have our lawyers and our people make sure they're sound? It's like, sure. Yeah, I did. But yeah, this definitely just seems like if you're like a lot. I saw some blame going to PlayStation for how Bungie's turned out. All I can say is PlayStation's probably the only reason Bungie is open today. Because this sounds like this was a studio that was going to fold before the final shape. And PlayStation acquiring them gave them just enough money to maybe say goodbye to Destiny 2.
Yeah, I mean,
like unofficial goodbye because they're still providing smaller content, but like it definitely seems like Bungie was in a spot that like maybe they wouldn't exist anymore because their financial situation's really bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the Bungie news, Dave. Unless you have anything else, there was a ton of stuff that was coming out. Yeah,
it just seems like there was just that they were taking like pretty much like every other like mega retail corporation in a while. It's like, oh, look at all the cash we have, we're gonna go do this. Like, why would you go and do a 180 on what you've already been doing that's super successful? Oh, because we can. Like, we're Bungie. Like, it's just kind of like, of course, like we're Kmart.
But the Bungie magic was a thing that popped up in Schreier's article a couple times.
We're Kmart. Like, we can sell cars. It's fine.
Oh, it's like when like Kmart like Sears was failing, so they bought Kmart. Like, that's gonna work. And this feels like they got that extra money in, and they're like, we have 3 incubator projects now.
Yep.
We're gonna make a MOBA, and it's just like, no, take that Sony money and make Destiny 2 better. Go make Marathon in a timely fashion.
Yep.
And now it's kind of backfired. But yeah.
All right. So we have what's delayed. So Avowed got pushed into 2025. It showed up on their 2024, or I'm sorry, you're messing. Yeah, 20. Yeah, it showed
delayed
up
till February 18th.
Yeah, it was in there like in that games coming out in the next 6 months, and so it would have been 2024. I hate the way that they worded this, like, oh, to allow Avowed to breathe properly within our model of stuff that's coming out in the next 6 months. We've decided the decision to move it. It's in a healthy state, but we want to make sure it has the right amount of room to breathe. Like, stop it. Like,
I'm gonna laugh if. Well, first off, God damn it, Microsoft. Like, I'm tired of every fucking 6 months. I'm like, all right, Microsoft's got their studios lined up and ready to release games, and then.
Because now we're 90 days post Hellblade and we have nothing else.
Yeah, like, apparently Indiana Jones is coming out, doesn't have a release date yet. And
but it's going to be too cramped to allow Avowed in there. So now we're going to move Avowed and give it a date. But the other game that we're letting it have room to breathe for doesn't have a date.
Yeah, I'm going to laugh when fucking the one game that can compete with Avowed that they could be worried about would be Dragon Age. I'm going to laugh when EA announces Dragon Age is coming out in like February or March next year. Because that would be the only game I can think of that they would be like, let's get out of the way of
Yeah.
that game because it's competing with us, but not.
I believe the
move 3
game,
months out of the
the
way.
quote unquote Game Pass model, like we've talked about, like you need to have something every like 60 days. Like I get that, but don't move Avowed. Move something else. Like
Yeah.
get your games out from the studios that you bought. Like get them out.
Yeah. I saw someone tweeted earlier that like they've acquired more studios than they've released games
Yeah.
from first party in the last like
That goes for Sony too.
3
Like
years.
Concord's coming. Yes. Okay. Cool. Fair
Is it
games. Where I don't know. I'm just at least it's coming
I
out.
know.
At least they
I
bought
know,
them and
it's
they're
coming out.
releasing something.
If it comes out and no one plays it, did it really come out?
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah. That's just.
Yeah.
All right. So what we're
Get
planning
your
on
shit together,
watching?
Microsoft.
Yeah. All of you get your stuff together.
Yeah.
So, what we're planning on watching. So for me, I watched like right off the top of my head, like I watched the 30 for 30 documentary on ESPN about Dude Perfect.
Okay.
The trick shot people.
How long was that? Was it actually 30 minutes? It wasn't like
No,
one of
30
those-
for 30 is just like it used to be their 30 stuff for 30 years and now they just use
Okay,
30 for
that's
30.
okay.
So it's like a 90-minute documentary.
on Dude Perfect.
Well, they're like a
Really?
15-year-old company, so they kind of talk
No,
about
I
like,
know, but it's just like
they kind of
90
like
minutes?
it was like the whole buildup was like some world record shot that they dropped off the tower of something in Vegas. So it's like the longest. Like I didn't know that they held like 36 world records. Like that's a lot. Like
Yeah, but when you look at records and they're like the most random things. it's
yeah.
like-
And then just kind of how it started, like how they started and like it was like college kids and stuff like that. It was just interesting to me, like that part of it. So I thought that was really cool about like how YouTube was like 4 years old when they started. And like Good Morning America's like, oh, we saw your video, and they wanted to, like just how quickly something could happen like that in terms of something like that would never. The viralness can happen now, but in terms of like showing up on Good Morning America like the next morning, like that would never happen. And the struggles the company went through, where it kind of was only like ran by like 2 guys for a little while, and then now it's like a $400 million company. Like it was just like super fascinating just to see the elements of it. So if maybe it's a little long, but I enjoyed the pacing of it. It was one of the there's worse 30 for 30s. So
No, I know. There is a while, like I feel like after the initial 30 for 30, there was like a gap where they just tried to make a documentary on anything.
yeah.
And then did 30 for 30 disappear for a little bit, I feel like? Or was it-
I don't think it gets focused on as much as 30 for 30. They probably need to just change that anyways to like ESPN documentaries or something like that, or ESPN
Because
presents. Like,
30 for 30 was like a Bill Simmons thing, right? Was he the guy trying to push that back then when Grantland was a thing?
yeah,
Am I aging
mean,
myself?
a little bit. I mean, I think you might be
Okay.
talking about like Outside the Lines or something like that, but or the investigative reporting thing. But like 30 for 30 is now just like documentaries in general. Like they've done stuff on like the Florida team with Urban Meyer and Untold Story. There's a lot. Like there's just a lot going on with those things. And as I get older, like there's things like that are super interesting to me that I want to hear about and see. And just because like I kind of lived through it as a kid.
I like the
or-
Netflix ones that came out last couple years.
Yeah,
like
those are some of the
N1,
untold
Malice in
stories.
the
Yeah,
Palace.
yeah, the untold stories. Those
Untold,
also. Yep. And then I've just like I've been playing college football. I played my first user versus user, like a online dynasty game on my Xbox, and Angela's like sitting next to me. She's like, I forgot what this did to you. Like she's like, you haven't had to do this for like 10 years, and I'm like, okay, it's like the second quarter, and I got like a 14-point lead, and I'm trying to like think and talk through it, and she's like, she can see me like sitting up, and she's like, what the heck are you doing? Like, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
I won. I did win. So that felt pretty good just for me to, because I've been getting my ass kicked online. Like when I play random people, I just get destroyed.
How you haven't quit though, right?
No,
Do you do the mercy kill?
I think
or
I did.
mercy quit?
I think I did once.
Okay.
I think I have like a 2-8 record online right now or something like that in total. So it's
When you tell yourself like, "Hey, I have a full-time job. I got a
Yeah,
family.
no,
I got
it's
time to
just
put into
like-
this game."
when somebody's already up a whole bunch and they start like bombing the ball down the field and going for 2, I'm like, okay, you can have your game, but I'm not going to give you my time. Like,
Yeah.
so, and but for the most part, I'll usually ride it out and I'll start trying to work on something. I'm like, okay, I'm going to lose, but I'm going to make sure that I'm fully comfortable with like my audibles or what I'm doing now and hot routes. And, like there's some minutia to these games that I kind of forgot. Like, and if this is, I guess I don't have anything to compare it to, but like if this is significantly different than Madden, like Madden has no chance this year. Like no chance.
Madden's gonna get a different like review microscope than it's used to
Yeah.
getting because of college football.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm still having a blast with it. The recruiting is fun. I kind of forgot, like, and you and I have talked about this before, and this is kind of like your Overwatch thing, but I kind of forgot, like, sometimes how it's nice to just pick it up, play a game for 30 minutes, 35 minutes. You get a full game start to finish and walk away.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, like, even, like, I could do, like, a week in less than an hour. I could do my recruiting and play my game and, you know, and check the stories for the next week and shut it down and walk away. And Owen's, I've been playing some Fortnite with Owen again, so that's been kind of fun. It's still just awesome to me. Like, I love the fact that in 2024 or whatever we are, that he can sit there on the couch playing his Switch, and I can be on the couch on you know, playing the Switch in handheld mode for him, and I'm on the couch next to him, and I'm playing Xbox on the big screen, and we're playing together, and it just works. And he has no problems with it, and it just functions, and it's still like it's so cool, like, and I love it, and I'm sure it's just like something just basic and dumb or whatever, but I'm like, you know, he's like, and I forgot, same thing, like I just talked about the NCAA. He's like, Dad, will you play like a match or two with me? And I'm like, I don't really want to, and then I play a match or two with him, and it's only been like 25 minutes, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's not too bad. Go to bed. Yeah, like, and he's thrilled, and I'm like, okay, cool, and I just got to make sure that I'm doing more of that versus like what I almost programmed myself to for years. I'm like, oh, I got to do like a Destiny raid. It's going to be like 3 hours of my life tonight. Like, you know, and I feel like I'm starting to loosen that grip of where it's like, it's 7 o'clock at night. Okay, I'm going to go sit down and play video games. I'll see you at 11 o'clock versus like, okay, she can sit next to me doing reading and I'm done in 35 minutes, 45 minutes, and we can watch a show and go to bed, you know, like, so I'm figuring that balance out again, that I definitely got way off balance for a long time. And I'm sure it helps right now that I probably haven't logged on and spent more than 20 minutes playing Destiny in 6 weeks, or not 6 weeks, but 3-4 weeks.
Probably almost close.
Yeah. So the month of July was very rare, on top of vacations and life and everything like that. And I'll probably post some pictures on it just to mess with people, because I know they like to talk about it. Last thing, I made an old man adult purchase that's getting installed tomorrow. I've been sore.
Railings for the toilet?
No, I've been sore as hell after playing softball and doing stuff because I'm old. And I don't. Michael has seen me in person, so I do not fit in bathtubs.
You've got railings for your bathtub.
Nope.
You're at that point. You got life alert?
We bought a hot tub. Like,
okay.
So that is delivering soon. And I got those Olympic Jordan Retro 6s that came out over the weekend. I got those, so I was pretty happy about that. So
there you go. Yeah. You still need to post the shoe collection, and
I got to get it ready because it's a mess. Shoes and hats right now are a little bit of a mess. I did get some more boxes for them though, so.
Yeah, well, for me, not really playing too much. There's just been a lot of video game repairing done. I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but I bought 6 broken Xbox 360 controllers for about $22. They were untested and had different issues with them. All 6 are apparently broken in different ways, and I'd like to report that now I have 4 good Xbox 360 controllers, and the other 2 I just had to use for parts because they were beyond repair.
Yep.
So now I have 4 Xbox 360 controllers for the Xbox 360 that I bought and repaired like 2 months ago. I don't know. That's one of those things where like when work's been like super stressful the last couple weeks, that like I've just been not been able to focus on anything other than like little like manual tasks for some reason. That's relaxing to me. Also repaired some Pokemon games that never worked before. I do need to do some battery swaps, so I got to find where I put my soldering iron as well, because I got one of the RAM has an issue, so I have to like retouch the joints with the soldering iron to hopefully salvage the RAM on one of the Pokemon games. So fixing controllers, fixing Game Boy games, and then also I forgot, like behind me the shelf's not visible, but like I have a Vita and a PSP, and I was just like, you know what? Let me download all the shit that I have on the digital stores, just so I can see what I have. And I've come to the conclusion I'm probably going to have to put custom firmware on my Vita, just because
the proprietary memory cards are impossible to find.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have a 32 gig and a 16 gig, and it's just one of those things where it's just kind of annoying having to swap the memory cards out.
Yep.
And then also I forgot that most of my PS1 games that I downloaded to the Vita are only on the Vita because PlayStation fucked up one weekend and accidentally listed them all as available to like install
Yeah.
on the Vita, because not every PS1 game's compatible officially, so you can't download all of them, but they technically all do work. But you're blocked from downloading them, so I might have to do custom firmware just so I can do the very stupid thing of downloading the PS1 games to my PSP, uploading the PSP files to my PC, and then using custom firmware to then drop those PC, PSP, PS1 games onto my Vita, just so I can all have them on my Vita. Because PS1 games on the Vita are fucking fantastic. It's my preferred way to play those games, because when I blow up a PS1 game on my TV, it looks like fucking shit. But on the Vita screen, it's beautiful.
Yep.
So yeah, I've been kind of just like reorganizing that stuff, and it's just one of those things where after a little bit, I'm just like, yeah, like I don't care about trophies on the Vita, at least. So like, I don't mind going the custom firmware route and then just removing my network ID from that Vita. Like, it's not the end of the world if I do that. So that's the route that I will probably be going over the next couple weeks.
Nice.
Even though it's super easy, I know I can do it in about 5 minutes, but it's one of those things where like organizing all the files that I need that I want to transfer over.
Okay,
I'm
Josh
probably
Langford.
Well, it's funny thing is like I when people say custom firmware, they're immediately like, oh, you're gonna go out to the pirate a bunch of stuff, and it's one of those things where it's like, no, I actually have a lot of stuff that I want to just fucking play on this thing.
Yeah.
But PlayStation blocked some PSP games from being on the Vita for no reason.
Yeah.
And PS1 games are blocked on the Vita, or some of them are, for no reason. And I just want to have access to everything I paid for on one platform. So yeah, a lot of fixing consoles and stuff like that. I was really happy with being able to fix all those Xbox 360 controllers.
That's impressive. That's like some patience and some precision too. So that's super impressive.
Yeah, I could probably salvage at least one of the two that I used for parts, but it just the shell looks like shit.
Parts probably too.
Well, I can probably Frankenstein the two that I used for parts into one, but both of them have really nasty shells, and like I don't know if I want like a super shoot up looking Xbox 360 controller. And I don't like aftermarket shells.
Okay, I was gonna say, okay.
They're usually 3D printed and they feel like shit.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where it's just like I'll just have two for parts if I ever need any more parts for whatever reason. But yeah, a lot of video game repairs happening over here. That's been my after work thing. I throw on a YouTube video, much like you do your 30 for 30, and then I'm just sitting at my desk, just taking things apart and putting them back together.
All right, cool. All right, so that is our show for this week. So please consider sending us some questions. #AskDigitalDays, either on Twitter, put them in Discord, put them in the Facebook group, any of those places, and we'll see them and add them to the agenda. It doesn't have to be gamer related, can be gamer related. You can follow us on the social media at Digital Days Pod, where you can send those Ask Digital Days questions. You can also follow Michael at the First MJC. You can follow myself at Good Dave Hunt. Our Facebook group and our Discord server, like I just mentioned. And then patreon.com/Digital Days Gaming. So we really appreciate all of you that are listening and downloading and hopefully reviewing the show, telling your friends about it, get some more. We did not do a Deadpool Wolverine review yet.
We did talk about it last week a little bit.
I need to see that, but I am verbalizing now because I keep forgetting that I am going out of town next week again.
I'm going out of town in 2 weeks, Dave, but I'll still be here for the podcast.
We'll have to see. Maybe we have to record on Monday.
Maybe.
So
pending news.
Yeah,
so
I have to move my daughter back into down to Kentucky. And then we're doing some Cincinnati stuff. And so like, yeah.
Ew, Cincinnati, Dave.
It's on the way. Like, I'm going to a Reds game. It's on the way to Kentucky.
Okay, you're going to a baseball game.
Yep,
okay,
and there's Kings Island in there, which is owned by Cedar Point, so we can go there for free as part of our pass. So leave me alone. It's straight down.
There's if you're not from the Midwest, there's tension between every Midwest
Yeah,
city and state.
Ohio as a state sucks.
Yeah,
So-
Ohio's garbage.
Yeah.
Fuck Ohio.
Yeah,
Like,
so-
Michigan and Illinois can agree here. Fuck
Yeah.
Ohio.
But I have to drive 3 hours through Ohio to get to Kentucky, which is where my daughter goes to school, and my son and his wife and my soon-to-be grandchild
Dave tells the
live.
family we're stopping for chili and a baseball game.
No, I don't eat chili and like the Gold Star or Skyline. Not a chance. Not a chance.
I don't like it either, but like if you mention Ohio, you have to like, or Cincinnati, you have to mention that. But yeah, okay, cool.
I can hear her upstairs saying, I can hear Angela upstairs saying no to Skyline and to Gold Star.
Okay, good. Yeah, good. Because chili's garbage, but I think that's all. Like they're known for like rivers that catch on fire and chili that gives you the shits. So like Ohio, welcome.
Yeah.
LeBron used to live here. Is the motto.
Yeah. So at this
Fuck
point in time, I
Michigan,
don't know when to tell you the next time that we might be on a little hiatus until late August, until Gamescom probably at this rate. So it wouldn't be necessarily bad. You guys can catch up. Some of you guys are behind. There's a Patreon episode for you to listen to if you subscribe to us.
And we might record one soon because I gotta explain the future of the MCU today.
Yeah. So I got to watch that movie though too, I think. So
maybe kind
Yeah,
of.
so-
I don't know. We'll
all
see.
right, that's our show for this week. I hope everyone has a great week. Keep moving forward.
Don't be a dick. See you. Fuck Ohio. Fuck Michigan. Fuck Wisconsin.
Oh
fuck
my
Minnesota.
god. Yeah, okay. Go win a baseball game. 2 games in 1 month.
Hey. Fuck the White Sox. See, I said it.
All right, let's stop. Okay.
But seriously, fuck Wisconsin. Fuck Ohio. Minnesota, the accents bother me, so I don't like Minnesota.
All right, exporting. All right, thank you guys for hanging on the chat and watching. If you're still here, who is this? GXDR Forever or 4Eve? Are you still here?
You're like, who are you?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Like, I mean,
Dave doesn't like when usernames are different across platforms.
yeah,
It throws him off.
I'm just curious. Like, sometimes he hasn't been in the chat for a while, and then he kind of just came back, which is awesome. I appreciate that. It's just May of it's been like over a year. So did you leave me? I'm just curious who
Yeah,
you
he
are.
left.
So
We said fuck Ohio, and he was like, I'm done. I'm
yeah,
leaving.
he's gone. So all right. Thank you guys for hanging out in chat. Thank you guys for listening. Appreciate it and posting stuff in chat. You all have a great night. We'll talk to y'all later.